Welcome to Assembly Update. I'm Assemblymember Angelo Santabarbara, and today we are going to talk about some flooding that occurred in my district, and we have with us Gary Striar, who is the CEO of the American Red Cross of Northeastern New York. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Thanks for having me.
We had you on a show once before, but
yes.
We brought you back given recent events, and there was flooding in the 111th Assembly District, Fort Plain area. Had a chance to visit out there, and amongst other things, we talked to Montgomery County Emergency Management, and they were able to give us updates on the flooding situation. But also, we saw that Red Cross was out there, and we had talked about some of the things that Red Cross is involved with, and I've got to see them firsthand several times, several emergencies in Schenectady County and now in Montgomery County. And I had a chance to visit the shelter and some of the other things, activities that were going on out there. Why don't you give us a little update on what's happened and how Red Cross was able to assist?
We were there immediately after the flooding occurred. We had a shelter open the first Friday night, which I think the flooding occurred Thursday night and during the day Friday. And so we had a shelter at the top of the hill at the elementary school in Fort Plain, and so people had a place to go immediately and to be safe. And you know, we served meals there. It was actually air conditioned, which was nice. There were showers there, so people could go there and immediately have a place to sleep. Some people just wanted to go and have some meals because, you know, there was power out in parts of the Fort Plain the first day, and so, you know, the basic thing, first thing is get people to some place where they're safe. So we had the shelter open. We had health and mental health people involved in the shelter because obviously a lot of folks were in, you know, emotionally it was a very difficult thing to, in a matter of minutes, you know, have to leave your home. During the course of the days after that, we kept the shelter open. We had some subsequent flooding, I think, the following Monday, and we had a new surge of people in the shelter. But beyond that, we've been, you know, going throughout the community, giving people food and snacks, mental health support, and distributing thousands of bulk items the last couple of days, you know, shovels, tarps, rakes, brooms, bleach, the kinds of things people need to clean out their homes. And the shelter closed the other day. Everybody had a place to go, so we didn't need to keep the shelter open any longer, but we'll be there for a long time providing other support.
Now, that was one of the things, I had visited the shelter and spoken with some of the families and spoken with some of your volunteers as well. Shortly after, they said that they were thinking about closing the shelter. What's the process that takes place? You said, you know, people show up, they stay there, and the numbers were reduced over time. What's happening in that time? We peaked out at, I don't know how many families were there, but it was over 100 people, I believe.
Yeah.
And then over time it got down to the last day where it was around 20 people there. So what's happening during that time period? What is Red Cross doing? How are we getting these numbers down as far as people that need that shelter open?
What we do is we work with the DSS in the county, and they meet, you know, family by family and look at, do you need housing? If you need housing, the county and, you know, other organizations and us help to identify a place for people to go. And it was really one family at a time. And, you know, some families didn't need a place to go because they could stay at a friend or they could stay at a relative, but it was really a process of caseworkers from Montgomery County, our folks, other organizations sitting together and figuring out where will that person go. And we don't close the shelter until the county says everybody's accounted for and everybody has the place to sleep.
And until that happens, that shelter remains open,
right?
Even if new people are in need that you haven't identified before.
Right, and we had people who came, I think the Monday night, who weren't there the prior 3 days of the shelter. So you know, some places got evacuated when it rained again the second time. Yeah, so we keep the shelter open until the county says everybody's taken care of, everybody's got a place to go.
And while they're there at the shelter, just continuing that topic, I had a chance to talk to some of your volunteers, some of the people from Red Cross. One of the first, I took a little tour of the setup in the school. One of the first rooms I visited was sort of like a radio room. Maybe you can describe what's going on there. There was 3 or 4 people. I had a chance to talk to them. They seemed to be in communication. What's happening in that room?
We have ham radio operators that work with our folks, and we can transmit messages back and forth. Sometimes it gets difficult to reach people on cell phones, particularly when you got in the lower part of the village, the cell phone reception was spotty, and sometimes when there's a disaster, the cell phones get overloaded. So the ham radio is really another way for us to communicate among our volunteers and staff that are working on the disaster assignment.
And then, so I had a chance to visit that room, and I'm trying to think the tour went on. We eventually made it to the kitchen area. Your volunteers are absolutely wonderful, and they served hot meals. One of the questions that people may be wondering, is this food all donated? Is it stuff that Red Cross has to purchase directly, or how do we get the supplies to make sure that people have the meals that they need?
It's a combination of all of the above. Some things are donated, some things we buy locally, some things are shipped in from our national organization. So it's a really mixed bag, and a lot of the products come in for us to cook at the shelter in Fort Plain.
And as far as this emergency goes, certainly it looked like there was enough donations or food available for people at the time they were at the shelter.
Yeah, we had a lot of companies that were very generous and came, and I mean, I was there one day when the Target folks came over and brought us these huge supply of water. So there were a lot of companies that were, but if we have to, we just go to the local grocery store
Sure.
and buy what we need. We try to get it other ways first, because that's obviously the most costly way to do it. But we had plenty of food. We had the big kitchen that we keep in Albany working there, and that can throw out about 15,000 meals a day.
Okay.
And that kitchen is actually still supplying the relief operation in Oneida and Herkimer.
And the families that I spoke to, you mentioned this as well. Some of it occurred really quickly, and they were forced to leave their homes and go to the shelter in a short period of time. And clothing, they said clothing became a problem because they couldn't bring clothes with them. Is that something the Red Cross helped out with?
We had some clothing available in the shelter. Generally, there are other organizations that provide clothing. When something like this happens, all the not-for-profits work together.
Okay.
Catholic Charities and the Salvation Army and Habitat for Humanity, and a lot of the local churches were incredibly active in Fort Plain, and so everybody came together to make sure the clothing was provided. That's something that we generally don't provide a lot of.
And I saw there was clothes being brought to the shelter, so you guys kind of work together.
Exactly.
And make sure that all the basic needs are addressed.
It was a really great partnership this time of all of the not-for-profits getting together, rolling up their sleeves and helping each other, nobody worrying about turf or who's going to get credit. And a lot of wonderful organizations. They're going to have to keep working together for the long term.
And that's one of the things I really noticed, is that the community did come together. It was a neighbor helping neighbor situation. Everybody was volunteering to help clean up and do what they had to do to move forward from this. The other thing, I had a chance to, since we last met, I had a chance to travel during the emergency situation in Bellevue and Schenectady.
I heard about that.
Yeah, I traveled along with your volunteers, your Red Cross, is it ERV?
Yeah, Emergency Response Vehicle.
Okay, they call it the ERV, right?
Yeah.
I had a chance to kind of tag along and help out and see how that process works, where you stop into the neighborhoods and help people and ask them if they need something as basic as clean water.
Right.
What's the theory behind the emergency response vehicle, and how often does it go out?
It goes out generally when it's a disaster that encompasses more than just one specific location. When we want to go out through an entire neighborhood or through an entire community, it allows us to, we can go to the people. We can go right to people's homes. We can knock on doors and see, what do people need. Sometimes people really just want someone to talk to a little bit.
Sure.
But we can fill that vehicle with food and water, and we'll have sometimes a mental health person in the vehicle or someone that can deal with health issues, and we can just go through the community. And it's a great way for us to get our eyes on, what's going on in an entire community. Yeah. And that's really what we're still doing in Fort Plain today. And I know they're always thrilled when an assemblyman or an elected official comes, because they like to show off, and I think it makes them feel really good. So thank you for doing that.
It was nice to volunteer. It was nice to help people. It was nice to, in Fort Plain, as I walked through the streets, I asked them, I said, has Red Cross been here? And they said, yes, they wait for that time. They were waiting for that particular time when the emergency response vehicle would come through, because sometimes that was the only food and water that was being brought to them while they were cleaning up or getting, recovering in their homes. So that was really, really appreciated by the residents, and I think they look forward to seeing that truck come through.
And they see the Red Cross symbol. It's like, to a lot of people, it's a symbol of comfort.
It is.
That, you know, when the Red Cross is there, you see it all the time when you respond to fires, that when the Red Cross people arrive, you can see people sort of breathe a sigh of relief that, you know, a terrible thing just happened, but these people are here to make me feel better and to help. And, you know, a lot of times people need, you know, a hug and some comfort and somebody that can, you know, listen to their story and then, you know, give them the basic necessities to get their life back together.
Yeah, and there was a loudspeaker. They were announced when they were coming to the neighborhood, and people would come out, and they were very happy to see you. One of the other things that I noticed as I tagged along, as I rode along with the vehicle, is sometimes they would do assessments. Right. So what happens? When did they do that, and why did they do that?
We do damage assessments at the beginning of the response because it helps us understand exactly what kind of service we have to provide, and we share that data with the state and with the federal government, and it also helps with with trying to get federal assistance. But we need to know how many homes are damaged so that we can understand what we're up against, what kind of service are we going to have to provide. Are there 200 homes or are there 1,000 homes? And in this case, there were around 250 homes that were significantly impacted in Fort Plain. There were more homes actually in Oneida and Herkimer, but you know, most of the ones in Fort Plain were in the downtown area.
Yeah, and as you said, you can't. These things just happen very quickly, and sometimes you just it looks like it's going to be okay, and next thing you know, there's a flood. After the flooding occurred, how quickly before Red Cross was on the ground?
Within a matter of hours. Within a couple of hours, we were there. Since it was very localized in one place, it was easy for us to marshal our resources in a fairly concentrated area. It makes it more difficult when the flooding is throughout an entire county or in 20 different places. So we were able to, you know, we have a great relationship with the county emergency management folks, and they called us and they said, we need you here. And we were there within a couple of hours, and the first thing to do was just get that shelter set up so people have a place to go out of harm's way. And the shelter was at the top of the hill, so we knew we didn't have to worry about flooding. Right. And then, you know, you take it from there.
And the shelter location is determined, is it a joint, did they kind of figure out based on what's happening, where the best location is?
And we have pre-existing agreements for most of our shelters, so that ahead of time we know where our shelters are, and we have a signed agreement usually with a lot of times it's a school, sometimes it could be a fire department, it could be a church, and so ahead of time we know what's in the shelter. Is there a kitchen? Are there showers? Is there emergency power? So you know, we've got in the headquarters in Albany, you know, lists of, you know, obviously on computers now of, you know, 1,000 or so potential shelters, and we work with the county and the local government to figure out what's the best place. And in this case, the elementary school was perfect because it had the showers, air conditioning, kitchen, and it was out of harm's way in terms of the flooding.
You know, and for that matter, it had the cafeteria. Everything was ready, kind of in place for it to be operational almost immediately.
Yeah, and the school was wonderful to us. They were really helpful. The custodians at the school, I know, worked all weekend to help us. It was really, like you said, an entire community coming together to help.
It was good to see. It's you know, when emergencies happen, people come together. They're at their best. They're helping one another, and I saw that during my time there happen throughout the entire emergency, and it's probably still happening right now.
And it will, hopefully, for a long time. They're good people in there.
Yeah.
And responses are much more quick if we can rely on local volunteers and local organizations that are all working together. When you have to call in the cavalry to come, help us, you know, from Washington D.C. or some other place, then the response takes longer, and then people aren't necessarily as sensitive to sort of some of the local issues. So this worked beautifully in terms of a community working together.
Gary, we're going to talk more when we come back. We're going to take a short break. We are talking with Gary Striar from American Red Cross and the experiences and the situation, an update on the situation on the flooding in Fort Plain. We'll see you when we get back.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Packers.
Viking.
Packers.
Viking.
Viking.
Red state. Blue state. Vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Night owl.
Early
We
bird.
come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live.
our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org. When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to Assembly Update. I am Assembly Member Angelo Santabarbara. My district office is located at 1170 Riverfront Center in Amsterdam, New York, 12010. I can be reached by phone at that office at 518-843-0227 or by email at santabarbara@assembly.state.ny.us. Welcome back to the show. We've been talking with Gary Striar from American Red Cross. And we've been talking about the flooding that occurred in my district in Fort Plain and how the Red Cross was able to be on the ground within a matter of hours, assisting people that needed help, setting up a shelter, providing basic services, food and water, and also helping with assessments as well as they were doing that with the emergency response vehicle traveling through the streets. Gary, thank you again for coming back on the show to talk firsthand on an emergency that's happened right in my district. We were talking off camera for a little while, and you had the statistics on the emergency, and it affected areas beyond my district as well, beyond Fort Plain. Maybe we can go through some of those numbers just to give people a sense of what happened and how the magnitude that American Red Cross was involved.
In terms of damage, there were over 2,000 homes impacted. Only about 250 of them were in Fort Plain. Most of the rest of them were in Herkimer County. There were some in Madison County and Oneida County. Herkimer seemed to be the biggest piece of the damage. So we were fortunate. It was terrible what happened in Fort Plain, but it was much smaller in terms of numbers of homes than in some of the other counties. In terms of the support we provided, we had over 200 shelter nights, and that's sort of a person and a night is one shelter night. So there were over 200 of those. We served over 11,000 meals and snacks just in Fort Plain. Across the entire area, including central New York and all of that, it's almost 25,000 now. We distributed about 1,000 cleanup kits and comfort kits. Those are the things, the rakes, the brooms, those sorts of things. Right. And the biggest thing the last couple of days has been, the bulk items, the bulk supplies, again, the shovels and all of those things. And, we've distributed over 17,000 of those throughout the area.
And certainly shovels, things like shovels are a basic tool, but without it, it's kind of hard to do cleanup, kind of hard to help out. The fact that those are being distributed really makes a big difference.
Yeah, and the stores are sold out of those things very quickly. Obviously, people don't have a lot of this stuff in stock, so we're able to bring literally truckloads of this material in from other places and just hand it out.
As I was walking through, I had a chance to meet with Montgomery County Emergency Management. I went through their briefing. I sat in their meeting room, and we looked. One of the things they did is we kind of kept an eye on a weather map that Doppler, kind of a radar imagery that was on the projected on the wall. They were kind of tracking to see what else was coming, if anything else was coming. Now, are they in contact with you if they see other things happening? Are they in contact with Red Cross?
We, during the first week after the flood in Fort Plain, we had someone actually sitting in that office the entire time they were open.
Okay.
Which they were really appreciative of and allowed for us to have the close coordination. When beyond that, for when something may happen, or we'll be in touch with them and we'll talk ahead of time. What do you want to do? Do you want us to have somebody out there? Do you want to just be available on the phone for now? So we whenever there's something might happen, we in all 17 of our counties, work closely with the emergency management office and figure out, what are we going to do if something happens, where are we going to open shelters, who's going to call who, those sorts of things. So you don't want to be planning those things after the flood has already occurred. So and Montgomery County, we have a great relationship with the emergency management office. They're a great group, and they, we work really well together, and so we were next to each other in the same building during the entire Fort Plain flood.
Yeah, they had a pretty good. They kind of updated everybody once a day. They had a meeting, and I visited the shelter several times, and I had a chance to talk with a little girl that was coloring at a table, and she was kind of telling me, she really didn't know what was going on, but to have that shelter for families like that really makes a big difference. The fact that she was comfortable, she was 9 years old, but she was into her coloring and, waiting to see, she didn't know what was going on, but it's the shelter and the work that Red Cross does that allows her and her family to be able to move on from this and recover as quickly as possible. And I appreciate you being out there so quickly.
Thank you. It was heartbreaking to see some of the kids at the shelter. It's kids who left their homes immediately and went to a strange place and didn't know what was going to happen to them at that moment. It's tough to watch, and so I'm glad our folks and our volunteers are the most compassionate people. They can just make anybody feel better.
Yeah.
And
sometimes, like you said, it's just the fact that they have somebody to talk to.
Right.
Something a big event has happened in their lives, and sometimes you need somebody to talk to.
Right.
You talked about the shovels. We talked about all the supplies that went out. A lot of this stuff was donated. Some of it had to be purchased. If someone's watching the show, they want to help out the people in Fort Plain, they want to help out the people that got affected by the flooding, how do they do that?
We're still raising money, the Red Cross, to pay for our relief operation, and people can go to redcross.org and do that. They can text Red Cross to 90999 and contribute $10. They can go to call 1-800-RED CROSS. There are also lots of other organizations in Montgomery County. They're going to be raising funds and are going to play an important part in the relief operation. So I think people should be in touch with those organizations also. Habitat for Humanity, the churches, those organizations, and working through the county, you can find out who some of those folks are. But all of us are going to be there for a long time.
I saw the texting option. I think that's actually pretty convenient. Someone has a cell phone can easily text in a donation just by, and what is it again?
90999. Just text Red Cross to 90999.
And that will charge a $10.
Right. And
it's done fairly simply, fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So if you're watching the show and you want to help out, that's a quick way to do it right now as you're watching the show. What other items can be items can be donated? Where would they bring them?
The Red Cross does not accept donations of goods and things like that because we don't really have any way to manage it and to take care of it.
Okay.
There may be other organizations that are doing that. I would contact the Montgomery County Emergency Management Office, and they will know on a specific day, who was accepting what donations.
Okay. And one of the other things I wanted to touch on was everybody's kind of noticed that, hey, this flooding has happened again, and it could happen again. It seems that it's more frequent in recent years. Is that what you're experiencing too?
Absolutely.
So the number of emergencies that are you being called in for? Absolutely.
If you look at the data nationwide over the last 10 years, the number of disasters and people impacted, I believe it tripled over the prior 10-year period. It's something's going on. I don't know if it's global warming or not, and that isn't even my concern. My concern is that there are a lot more weather-related disasters. We just think about what we've had here: flooding, ice storms, tornadoes, we've even thrown in a few earthquakes now.
Yeah, that's true.
And what it shows is that the public needs to be prepared for disasters, and we at the Red Cross need to be prepared for bigger things all the time. So we're working really hard to strengthen our own capacity to be able to respond to more quickly, better, bigger every time. And at the same time, we offer a lot of programs to help people be prepared. There are things you can do to be prepared before a flood. Obviously, you can't stop the flood, but you can have your personal possessions in a safe place. You can have your phone numbers. You can have a bag packed of certain things to take with you. So there are things that people can do, and we work closely in communities to try to get that word out.
And providing the information is very important. And I did notice that you did have a packet of information for people that were affected, and I think it's repairing your flooded home.
Right.
And what is contained in that little packet that's available to the public?
It's about 50 pages of physically what can you do to your home after flooding to help get yourself back so that you can live in the home. How do you deal with insulation? How do you deal with wallboard? And some basic safety things at the beginning in terms of handling electricity and gas and those sorts of things, because obviously the most important thing initially when something's still wet is you need to be careful of the safety issues.
Sure, absolutely. And that information is available on your website or at your office?
Yes, yeah, you could just call us. People could just call us at 458-8111 in Albany, and we can get it out to anybody who needs it. And I'm presuming we are distributing it, and our folks in Montgomery County are distributing it also.
Okay. And the website, once again, for Red Cross?
www.redcross.org.
During these emergencies, if people want to volunteer that are not part of Red Cross, are they able to do that through Red Cross, or is it through some other means?
In what we did in the case of Fort Plain was we did not need additional volunteers at that moment. We were really hoping as volunteers would come in and get trained and volunteered for the next one, because what we really need is trained volunteers. So what we like to do is get folks in, get them processed, get them trained,
Right.
figure out what they're interested in, get them all ready to go, so that next time they can be ready. I know there were other organizations in Montgomery County that were looking for volunteers for this immediate disaster. So. And everybody's going to need volunteers for a long time, both in Fort Plain, and we always need volunteers because we respond to about 350 fires a year, and the kinds of things you've seen. So almost every day we're out on the scene responding to a disaster somewhere. We have to have teams available in all 17 of our counties all the time. So we're always looking for new volunteers.
And the volunteers are not local. They come from all parts of the state. Or they don't just come from Montgomery County. They
Right.
come from. So when you mobilize to go to a disaster, you're coming together and sending people to the area that's in need.
Right, and what we were able to do was most of the volunteers came from within our 17 counties.
Okay.
We try to do that as much as possible because obviously it's cheaper and quicker.
Sure.
If you can have somebody drive from Schenectady rather than flying in somebody from Georgia or something like that. So we were lucky. We were able to bring in most folks from within the area. But we always need more people, and obviously the more people we have who volunteer in the community, the quicker it is for us to respond and the better response it is. We don't want to have to be, pulling people in the middle of a flood from somewhere else.
Right. So locally or even anywhere in those 17 counties, if you're interested in volunteering, please
go to redcross.org and click on volunteer, and it will take you through the process. And there's a million different opportunities, not just disaster, whatever people want to do, teaching, working at blood drives, working on a computer. We have almost anything you might want to do.
Well, Gary, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for updating us on what happened out in Fort Plain and what is continuing to happen. And hopefully we've seen the last of this and that people can start to recover. And I want to thank you and your organization for helping people get their lives back together, find food and shelter at a time of need, and help people like that little girl, Kylie, that I had a chance to meet. Thank you. Join us again here on Assembly Update, where we'll talk more about what's happening in your community.